Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy, and welcome to Caregiver Support Live. I'm here with my co-host Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
So we're here to tackle some pressing questions around the personal caregiving experience and offer our best suggestions and ideas. So let's start. Let's start with our very first question. Here we go. I thought of you, Jennifer, with this question.
I thought of me too.
When I saw this, I was like, oh my God, we have to lead with this one.
This is very close to my heart.
Yes. Okay. So here it is. Question number one. My widowed father died last year, and since then, I've been trying to liquidate my parents' home. I haven't made significant progress on it for several reasons and was hoping for a little perspective. While I'm still trying to figure out how to sell $1,050 tchotchkes and learning that nobody wants even the nice china, my biggest obstacle is shifting through the personal effects. Every drawer or box I open has something they touched or loved or thought was important enough to keep. I've been trying to understand why these things had value to them, and it's taking so much time and more of an emotional toll than I thought. With every letter or note or picture I throw away, I feel like I'm throwing away a piece of them. It's like if I don't keep enough evidence of their lives, they will disappear. I will scan the things I want to archive when I can, but I'm a long way from that right now. I'm also surprised by the intimacy of this process. I'm learning things about my parents that are challenging my understanding of who they were. Some of it isn't pleasant, and I don't think I have the capacity to manage without some context. I know there are professionals that liquidate estates, but that process seems too radical and dishonorable for me. There has to be an in-between.
Oh, there's so much here.
Yeah. We could pivot to a view of part of your room, but we won't. So tell us, so, so
Uh,
tell us why you relate to this situation.
well, my mom died in 2020, and I had moved her in with me, and in doing that, moved in all her stuff. And we have a whole shed outside full of her stuff still. Um, and some boxes in here, and a lot of it is things that no one's going to buy, no one's going to, it's sentimental. I have letters my parents wrote to each other, things like that. And first I want to say to this person, what you're feeling is completely normal, and I could have written this. um Especially like learning things about your parents that are challenging without having the context of it, and having some distance now because it's been 4 years. Wow, it's been 4 years. It, I'll tell you, the time helps, because when you're in the moment, everything feels important. Everything feels like I can't throw this away. It certainly lessens as the time goes on. And what I had to do was realize that what held importance to them, to my mom and dad, doesn't have to hold importance to me. And that's okay, because there are things where I don't know who's in these pictures. I don't know if this ring was passed down, or if this was just a ring my mom bought on a whim, like there are things. And I remember thinking, and I think I even talked to you about this, Denise, like, I don't have anybody to ask, like there was no one left to ask. And so I just had to sort of sit with, well, okay, here we are. Like, this is the reality. I'm not ever going to know. And I have to just decide, do I want this sitting around collecting dust, or do I want to, sort of let go of it kind of helps you let go of the grief too. I mean, it's really part of the grieving process. Taking pictures and scanning things is a brilliant way to do it. but I think remembering you're not throwing them away when you throw away the stuff. They're still there, they're still with you. Um, I actually, when I first read this question, I thought this is a great area that is, it's sort of an area that I think could use some professionals, like a compassionate decluttering of, rather than just an estate company coming in. But really, I think it's a missing service that could really be helpful. Um, so those were my initial thoughts on it.
I think this would be great for our comfort care family coaches to add as a service.
Yeah,
Our comfort care family coaches start to help when palliative care starts for the caree. So they're really involved with the really difficult days around end of life and can really form that
yeah,
close attachment to the family caregiver and to the caree through the family caregiver. And I think can offer some helpful guidance as to how do you manage this? One thing that is part of this too is you might have a timeline where you have to get rid of things. If there's a house for sale or a house that you want to put up for sale, you might have the pressure of, we got to get through this stuff before this date. It also sounds like she's doing this alone or he is doing
yeah.
this alone, and that's awful. Just
Mhm.
want to acknowledge how awful that is to do by yourself.
Yeah.
So perhaps just asking a friend to spend a little bit of time going through some things. When we did this with my parents, we did it over a period of time because we moved them a lot within a short period of time. The last time we did it was with my dad. He lived in a independent living community, so we had time, the
Mhm.
time pressure. We had like 2 weeks to get everything out. So we just got everything out. And it's this horrible feeling of, oh my gosh, am I throwing away their life? And I also had this horrible feeling of, did I know them well enough? I spent a ton of time with them. There was no way I could have spent any more time with them. But you still think, well, was it quality time? Was it useful time? Did I ask all the questions? Did I figure out who
Mhm.
are the people in the pictures? And what I finally realized is it's the stories of them that are the legacy. It's
Yeah.
not the stuff in the boxes. It's the
Beautiful way to say
story.
it.
Yeah, it's the story of their life that we know it. And we don't have to know every piece of their life story. We'll never know every piece of their life story, but it's the essence of their story and how they moved through life. We know that, and that's what we keep. And that's enough.
Yeah. And the stories that they would repeat over and over are the ones that they felt were important. And those are the
Yeah.
ones we remember.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting that she was looking for a middle ground. And the middle ground I thought could be both. You hire a professional to help and you determine which rooms or which sections or which closets might have the most personal things that you want to go through. And then everything else you just leave up to a professional. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And there are those little things like my mom's best friend took a blouse of hers and made it into a pillow for me with a little message. Like, and it was a shirt she wore all the time that people commented on all the time. And so that was lovely. That was a great way for me to get rid of all her clothes and save this one thing that was can now I can display, and it doesn't have to just sit in a closet.
Every
So
once in a That's beautiful. I love that.
yeah.
Every once in a while, my sister will say to me, did we keep what we should have kept or did we just throw everything away? And I think, and I'll say to her, we did the best we could and we have what we have, and that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It is sort of a process of like acceptance and letting go that you can only do what you can do, whether that's in 2 weeks or 2 years. I almost wish I had a timeline because I'm now 4 years out and I still have a shed. So it would be a like a trigger for me to get it going because it's
Yeah.
easy to just ignore it.
Yeah. And I can see why you'd want to do that. I have a friend whose mother died 3 years ago, and I was asking her how her dad is. and he lives in the house as it was, and she calls it her mom's home. It really is organized, set up, and looks like her mom. And her
Mm,
dad hasn't made any changes and hasn't done anything with clothes. And who cares, I guess.
yeah.
I think sometimes people have this tendency in situations like that to feel like, oh, he's got to get rid of the clothes. He hasn't moved on in his life. And he has. He travels, he's active, he's social. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every situation can be different, and it's really just figuring out what's okay for me. And knowing that, I think for this particular letter writer, that she's doing it alone. It's hard to do alone. The
Yeah.
pressure of making a decision about every little thing is overwhelming, and it's paralyzing. It's paralyzing. And it does feel like you're causing hurt
Hmm.
by throwing things away. You're being disrespectful, you're dismissive, and it's not that. And I think anyone would want you to feel the relief of letting go.
Like if you think about your own life, if I've thought about all the stuff I have personally, there's probably a box or two I would keep if it were the end, everything else could go. And so it's like if you think about it flipped around, there's not much that I would be upset about people getting rid of,
Right.
it would be the obvious stuff.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
you're the one that is still here and you have to live in a way that is healthy for you.
Exactly. And I don't think anyone would want you to be unhappy and unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do things in a way that make you feel relief, which leads you to the path of feeling happier and healthier.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, and I talk about it regularly. And that's this idea of what we have endured doing a caregiving experience. For instance, we endured the long hours, we endured the lack of help, we endured just really challenging, awful, heart-wrenching moments. And I think it's time to stop enduring.
Yeah.
So, enduring this process of beating yourself up over just removing what no longer has a purpose in life is a hard way to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's okay to keep a couple things that you think, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to keep this. And it's okay that everything else moves to a new place. That's how I kind of looked at it too. It's all going to a new place, and that's a good thing.
Mhm. And it also made me think about, you know, for those of us who are still here in planning for our futures. That's why I love that like Swedish death cleaning that, they talk about is like getting rid of the stuff while you're still here so that you don't have to burden your family with that. I think is brilliant. And then you can tell the stories and you can please keep this and give the things to the people that you want them to, have them.
Okay, actually, I did do something right. And that was,
You do a lot of things right, Denise.
I don't know, sometimes I think, man, anyway, that's for a different coaching session. Okay, so my dad one evening went to a minor league baseball game with his buddies from the senior center. And my mom was home, and it was an opportunity for my niece and I to spend some time with her. And she told us the stories of the possessions.
Oh,
And my niece wrote them down. And then my mom said, and this is who I'd like to get this knickknack, this
wow.
statue. So it was really helpful. And it was fun to hear the stories. So, for instance, one thing that we discovered that they had, which I had never known, was they have a souvenir. Someone has it now. I think my brother has it now. It's a souvenir from the World's Fair that was here in Chicago in the late 1800s. That was a huge piece of my father's side of the family to be able to go to the World's Fair and then to have the souvenir. So my dad kept it. And then when we were cleaning out, I looked at this little piece of red, this little red cup, and I knew what it was. And I knew that we're not throwing that away. who wants this? It also helped to really say, okay, there's nothing meaningful about this. It's okay to let it go, but here's a few things that are meaningful. Let's
Yeah.
keep it. You know what else we found? So, so, so my grandmother was a difficult woman, my father's mother.
Mhm.
My sister-in-law was going through his paperwork after he died, and she found this unopened envelope from my grandmother to my father, and it said, "Open after my death." Now, my grandmother had died in 1996, and he never opened it because he knew what was inside of it. And it was, as you would expect, no one loved me. Don't even
Oh,
bother about a funeral for me because I know you didn't love me. Just have someone drop a few flowers at my gravesite because no one loved me. Oh my gosh.
oh.
Yes. Wow. I thought it was interesting. He didn't open it, but he saved it.
Mm, yeah. I having delved into the reselling world a little bit, on a practical note, although many people don't want to buy your fine china, there are a lot of things that people will pay a lot of money for that are, I'm thinking of that World Fair thing, and that if they don't have sentimental value to you, you can sell them and really recoup. A lot of people in caregiving are struggling because they don't have money because they're paying for care. And it's a nice way to try and sort of recoup some of that money. So if you're at that point, obviously this writer is not, but and there are agencies out there that do help. So I was just thinking of that as well.
We found a nonprofit that would come and pick up what we didn't want, and then
Mhm.
they would sell it and keep the proceeds. They would find a home for it with someone that needed a home and needed furniture or
Mm,
kitchen utensils. So that was a nice way to feel like, okay, it is going
yeah,
out to help someone else.
yeah. There's a company that I buy from a lot called Caring Transitions, and they do estate cleanouts and they do other things, and they're franchised, so they're all different all over the country. But I mean, it could have been them, but they will sell online and do online auctions so people can buy stuff, and then I think they take like 50%. So it is still, you're paying for a service, but what a great, and they specialize in moving seniors out of their homes. So I think they have more of a compassionate style than just a state company.
I think it is so nice to have someone just take care of that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, so good.
okay. Let's go to question 2, and then this will be our final question for today.
Okay.
My parents reside full-time in their own home where my dad is at risk of falling. He has experienced several falls, with my mom attending to him. In discussions with my mom about considering alternate living arrangements, like an apartment in an assisted living facility nearby, I'm grappling with conflicting feelings. On one hand, I want them to maintain their independence and autonomy. On the other, I'm deeply concerned about ensuring their safety. How can I balance their autonomy with the need to protect my dad from falls and fulfill my role as a caregiver? At the state level, I think about adult protective services swooping in to say that the family wasn't responsible for their safety. And oh, that worry about someone coming in and saying you're doing it wrong
Yeah,
and you are legally responsible for doing it wrong. That that is a fear
yeah.
that we live with.
I think people don't talk about it enough too.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah. You do worry
Mhm.
about how culpable am I in this situation? Like, am I
I remember talking to my mom, like she would not allow us to change her undergarments as often as she needed to. And I said, Mom, if somebody came in here, they would say I'm being neglectful. Like you've really got to like think about that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I get that. I think that is a huge fear that we live with. And I also think that we have a tendency to go to, okay, I need to move them. So I would suggest taking some steps to think about what do they need right now? You definitely can look to see what does a facility look like, what would be appropriate, and you can also manage the moment right now. And in this moment, you can ask the physician to write an order for home health services. So there's a visiting nurse and a home health aide that's coming to the house. There's been a fall, which would indicate perhaps there's been a decline. And it's always good to reach out to the doctor and ask for an order for home health anytime there's a change. It might mean that home health comes out and evaluates and says, oh, we can't cover, but it's still good to ask. It's just a nice habit to be in. Ask for an order. There's also a new Medicare service, which is training for the family caregiver. So you can also ask the doctor to order training so that someone through a home health agency, like an occupational therapist or physical therapist, can come out to the home, do an assessment, and do some training on the family caregiver and her mom on proper transfers, how to actually help someone up so that they're safe, and any other suggestions that might be appropriate and helpful. So reaching out to the doctor and asking for orders for home health and training, I think are really important to do right now. It's just nice to know you don't have to do it all yourself, right? Going back to the earlier, right? We just
Yeah.
think, oh my God. The other thing is because we worry that someone's going to come in and say, wow, you're doing it all wrong. I think it's also helpful to start documenting what are you doing, right? So document that you've called the doctor, document that you followed up with the doctor to request the order again, document that the home health agency came. Document everything you do so that you have this record of everything to
Yeah.
show that you are really being intentional, present, an advocate, as responsive as possible.
Yeah. I think that's really smart. I think there's another aspect to this too, which is the writer's conflict in her head of like, is independent, it's like independence versus deep complete dependence, and it's kind of like this all or nothing thing. And I was trying to think of an example in our own lives, like when I need something fixed in my house, I call a handyman and I pay for them to come and help me. That doesn't mean I'm dependent. That means I'm independent in a lot of other things, but in that area, I need help. And I think if we looked at it the same way, like we're not taking their independence away if we're bringing a service in to help them do one thing or two thing. It's like I think we're so afraid as children that we're taking our parents' independence away, but we're also providing them safety, and that's so important too. I think there's like this guilt that is so prevalent about that. And we're just giving them assistance to stay safe. I mean, that really is, because if something happened and we didn't do anything, imagine the guilt we'd have then.
Something too, there's a lot of emphasis on fall prevention. And I think that we internalize that to believe we must always be preventing falls. And I will say that's impossible. I think we do whatever we can within an environment to remove any fall risks, right? So the throw rugs, the tables in the middle of the way, whatever it might be, dim lights, we do everything possible. And falls happen. And falls happen as we get closer to end of life.
Yeah.
That is not something we're going to prevent. We are not going to prevent end of life. And that's why it's helpful to reach out to the doctor and get some help in the house to figure out what's going on. And it also could be asking for an order for palliative care. Actually, that's another thing I would ask for too. So home health, training, and palliative care. With palliative care, you'd have a nurse practitioner coming to the home every 4 to 6 weeks to do a whole evaluation. It's really nice, everything. And the nurse practitioner takes time with the caree and with the family caregiver. So you get a better idea of where are we in this disease process? Where are we in the natural cycle of life? What else can we do? What other services can help? And so that nurse practitioner can be a really invaluable resource around that too.
Yeah. Okay.
These falls are hard too. The other thing is, if this is consistent, if the falls are happening, I think it's also helpful to think about what are the supplies that we have on hand.
Mhm.
Nonstick bandages, antibiotic ointment, anything else that can help. And just being aware of how do we actually help someone up safely, and when do we call 911? So thinking through that plan too,
Yeah.
which is part of our family emergency planning as well.
Mhm. And then there are those situations, like you said, where, I'm just thinking of the time when we would tell my grandpa, always have your phone in your pocket, always, always, always. And he didn't have his phone in his pocket, and he was walking down the hall, and he knew he was going to fall. So he leaned against the wall and just sort of slid down. And he was there for like 4 hours before we called. And he didn't have his phone, and I was like, I am not going to feel guilty about this, because we told him so many times. He decided it wasn't like oh, I forgot. He decided not to put his phone in his pocket. And he's allowed to decide not to put his phone in his pocket. I mean, I really had to like struggle with that for a little while, but then I was like, no, we did everything we could have done. He's fine. Yes, it was not a great situation, but they can decide to do things we don't agree with too.
It's the whole, they're adults, we're
Yeah,
adults, right? And it's also important to acknowledge that we understand when there's a cognitive impairment and
absolutely.
what that requires. And that's very different than someone who's just like, I value independence at all costs, and so that's how I'm going to live my life. Now, the challenge for us is that then the impact falls on us. And that's
Yeah.
what used to get me so mad about my dad. So my brother died. The day of his funeral and service was just a horrible day for many, many reasons. So when I dropped my parents off at their apartment that evening, I said, none of us are going anywhere tomorrow. We're all going to stay inside. Now, it was August, okay? So nice weather, but I said, none of us are going anywhere. We're all staying inside and resting. And my mom said, absolutely, we are not going anywhere. Right, Raj? That's what she said to my dad. The next day, I was laying on the couch because I was exhausted. It was in the afternoon, and my dad called, and I thought, oh, sure enough, he had fallen. They lived across the street from Trader Joe's. For whatever reason, he decided they needed milk. Now, they really didn't need milk, and my niece was going to be there the next day, so she could have easily have gone to Trader Joe's, but he went to Trader Joe's, walked back. He was exhausted. He walked into the lobby of their apartment building. There's a rug, tripped on the rug, scraped his head, milk all over. I don't know how he cleaned up the milk, but anyway, so I had to go there and bandage him up, and boy, was I mad. I was just so mad. I was mad. And my mom was sleeping, so she didn't know. And he said, I just don't want your mom to know. She'll be so upset. And I said, what about me? What about me? What about me? Oh, used to really just,
Yeah.
it was hard to have enough compassion for him, because I thought, gosh, I just wanted, one day where we didn't go outside, because I knew once they went outside, all bets were off. Who knew what was going to happen?
Yep.
Although my dad was a bull in a china cabinet in the house anyway, so there was no safe space for him. But
I
yeah,
have to just tell you one last story. My grandpa would not wear a life alert, because not because he didn't want people calling or helping, but because, when he asked them about how the system worked, they would get the local call, and that call was forwarded to another state, and then it was coming back, and that didn't make any sense to him. And so he, because of that, was not going to wear the life alert. And we were like, do you realize your stubbornness about this is creating lots of other problems. It fell back on us, and to the point where he ended up falling and laying there. So just that silly stuff drives me nuts. But it was very important to him that it made sense. As an engineer, he needed it to make sense. So
Isn't that interesting?
yeah.
So for him, if it didn't make sense, it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get that. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I think for our letter writers today, we want to give them thanks and appreciation.
Yeah.
And I think both of them, I think, really come from the place of doing it alone.
Mhm.
And it's hard to do it alone. So we're grateful when you reach out for support, when you reach out for suggestions. So you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions you have. And you can send them to us, and it's questions@caringourway.com. You also can leave questions in our comments section as well. And we'd love your feedback and insights about any of these two situations we talked about today. What would you suggest? What ideas would you offer? We welcome your wisdom as well in our conversation. What else, Jennifer? Anything else?
I think we've covered it.
Yeah, yeah. It's so helpful to have these letter writers tell us what's in their head and heart,
Yeah.
because it's in all of our heads and hearts. So
Mhm.
know that
And
you're
it's
not
brave to
alone.
reach out like that. So
Yes, very much so. Yes. Okay, Jennifer, thank you so much.
thank you, Denise.
Thanks everybody for watching, and be sure to join us next month. We meet on the first Friday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to answer your questions about your caregiving situation. I'm Denise Braun. Stop by our community, caringourway.com, to connect with us, to receive our support, and to share your story. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.